Welcome to the Shutter Saga Podcast. I'm your host, Marvin Blue. Join me each week as we dive into amazing conversations with some of our industry's top leaders. We will talk about photography, business, and most of all, share the stories that have laid the foundation to our journey in this world we call photography. A couple of ways to support the show is to like, subscribe, and share the show with others. Leave those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and if you're a fan of seeing us live, we are on YouTube. Also, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Again, thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Welcome one, welcome all to another wonderful episode of the Shutter Saga Podcast. I'm your host, Marvin Blue. This is an episode I'm definitely excited for because of my guest. Now, I'm going to go ahead and preface that we had to have a little talk about how we do things here, because when I reached out to him, he was like, oh man, sounds cool. And then he does the most Hollywood move you can do to me and sends me to his assistant. Like, bro, do you not know I am the hottest of podcasts in 2024? Okay, like seriously, I'm one of four right now. Okay, there's no but you Hollywooded me with giving me your assistant. So I had this grand introduction, but I just I was gonna use because he has such a international flaring name that I had to give it the proper due. I was gonna Esteban, but Esteban,
you can still do that.
Sends me his assistant who does this, but I digress. So my guest today is an international, photographer. He is a world traveler, a world renowned man, a man of many talents. He runs, he does so many things, but most of all, he is a photographer, one of the most phenomenal photographers that I've come across these past few years. Runs a great education platform. He's a friend, a father. And he is coming to us from Connecticut by way of Antigua. I'm going to say it wrong. I'm going to mispronounce your home country.
Oh, I was born in Colombia, but I was born in Medellin, Colombia, which is
okay.
I mean, it's like a city in Antioquia, Antioquia, yes, which is like so if you think of like Medellin would be like considered like like St. Louis, and Antioquia would be like Missouri. So it's kind of like the state.
So Antigua. I want to say Antigua because
yeah, it does. Yeah.
It messes me up. Anyways, we have Esteban Gil. Esteban. That's what every time I just have to do that. And shout out to Tony for making this happen. He's a wonderful assistant that put up with the shenanigans.
She does. She's very good at making sure that I get things done. So you should always expect that, especially from somebody that has a mug with his own face on it.
I have a T-shirt with my own face on it, so I totally know where you're coming from with that.
Perfect.
But no, Esteban, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and coming on the show, man. Great to have you.
I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about whatever hard-hitted questions you have. I love when somebody says, "Hey, I want to go on. Can you go on a podcast?" And we're just gonna chat and just have it be organic and not have a crazy structure about stuff that we're going to talk about. So I always love these open-ended conversations.
So, as always, I'm going to just to totally not go against the grain, but everyone loves to always ask right after the question because they go, this is the biggest hit I get is you always forget to ask everybody what they're shooting with. So what's your brand? I got to ask that generic question.
Oh man. I'm actually pretty known as somebody that shoots with a lot of different brands. So, I shoot with probably 4 or 5 different brands throughout the day. It sounds very bizarre, but it keeps me kind of motivated I have very specific needs to the brands I'm shooting with. So my main system, I guess if you want like just a very a reliable autofocus system, I shoot with a Canon R3. And then the other systems I shoot with is the Fuji GFX, which I love for portraits. If I want that like medium format look, then I'll usually shoot with that. And then I've recently I've been shooting Leica for a number of years, and I'm slowly incorporating that into my main system. So I'm slowly contemplating leaving Canon and then going full Leica as my main system, Fuji as my secondary system, and I also shoot Hasselblad film and digital. So depending on what the situation is, I might pop out some Hasselblad stuff. So, and obviously I have like a couple point and shoots that I do, but those are just like small, like the Ricoh GR3, which I love. I just made a whole post about how much I love that camera. But yeah, I shoot like 4 or 5 different systems.
Everybody that listens, the dozens of fans that I do have listening to this podcast just went broke here. You could at least lie like, oh yeah, he's a crop sensor, like so we can just feel like we're in the ballpark with the great. He said R3 like that was like the cheapest one out. I'm like, when the R3 is the cheapest one that you just mentioned, I'm like, nah, oh, I gotta do a better job screen. Like, okay, no rich photographers. This is not. No, I'm just messing.
I mean, technically, you could say no broke photographers because they're so expensive. So
Okay.
you're probably richer than I am because of the fact that I'm buying all this equipment. So.
And if you're watching a video, I got joked with him before the show. I said, make sure your hair is done. And he went and made sure and said, God, that hair is flawless today.
Yeah, I just got it cut yesterday just for you.
Said, man, look at that. Shout out to the podcast that makes us, a radio podcast that makes you cut your hair for it. So now, correct me if I'm wrong, you started, you've been a photographer for quite some time, but you kind of burst on the scene in 2012? Was your kind of the starting point for you?
There you go. Yeah, so I started doing photography at 2012. So it was professional photography at 2012. I was fired from a job that I had for almost a decade, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. It was either the situation where I just needed to either just jump into it full on, or I was going to go back and do something that I've been doing for 10 years. And it's, I mean, if you want to get into like the actual story, I was working for a company as a general manager and a recruiter for a automotive retailer. And I was actually fired from that job. I was pretty certain that I was going to basically retire from that job, and I got fired out of nowhere. So I remember walking into the house. I had a newborn son. We were pretty much dead broke, no money in the bank, and I didn't really know how to tell my wife at the time that I had lost my job. And when I finally did it, I always credit her for saying one of the most important things that anybody's ever said to me, and said, well, you're either going to go back and do the same things that you've been doing for 10 years, or you're just going to just do this, because you're better off doing it now and failing at it than regretting it and not doing it, for not doing it when you're old and you're deathbed and you're trying to figure out like, oh, what should I have done differently in my life? So I literally had no idea how to start a business. I had no idea what photography was even about. And 12 years later, I have to credit her for encouraging me to start it, basically with absolutely zero knowledge. So, yeah.
So would you say that adversity was probably one of your early motivators when you first started?
Yeah. I mean, it was either, like I said, it was either me doing something that I absolutely hated doing. Because when I did get fired, I was actually offered the same exact position by a competitive company. And they basically said, well, just take the week off and come work for us a week later. And I immediately said, well, all right, I get a week off and then I go back and do the same thing that I've been doing for 10 years. But in reality, that was just my knee-jerk reaction of saying, yeah, I'm going to go do what's safe. I'm going to go do what I'm used to doing, because that's sort of like the consistency of a paycheck is always safe, especially with like a newborn and a family and a house. Like those are all things that you kind of have to count on when you're an adult. I mean, everybody knows that. But I had that little bit of a push where I was like, hey, just, take a chance. Like, you never know what's going to come out of it. And I'm very grateful for that, because it was either going back to that or just going head on and doing the whole photography thing that I had absolutely no idea how to do. I basically I went on Craigslist and I put 2 ads out, and I basically said, I want to be a wedding photographer. I don't have much experience, but if you're willing to let me photograph your wedding, I'll do it for free. And I photographed 2 weddings for $0. And that's what populated my website for the next couple of months until I actually started getting bookings. So.
Wait, you mean to tell me in your early days, you went with that original currency that we all went for, which was exposure?
Yeah. I am not above admitting that I started with that.
He said Craigslist and exposure. Like, I'm like, it's always the joke. I said, you can tell how long people have been in the game based on when you say, hey, how'd you get your like original bookings? If I hear like Craigslist or Thumbtack, I'm like, oh yes, you're part of my generation of yes. Oh man, the good old days. Yeah. When Wedding Wire meant something.
Yes. Yeah. Wedding Wire, the Knot, like that. I remember, I always talk about during my workshops that I always longed to be featured on Style Me Pretty. That was like the
I
thing.
was thinking that was my thing early. Style Me Pretty was like that was the gold star. Like that was I felt like at that time in 2015 that was the pinnacle. Like if Style Me Pretty just gave me one shot,
Yeah,
everything's gonna change overnight. Like I really believe that. Like I'm not afraid to admit how naive I was early in my career because
yeah.
we have a pretty similar. Like I think I started in 2013, so I was right behind you in those
Mhm.
early days of like the education. Like when we talk about how'd you learn to run a business. So going back into that during those times, what was kind of your stepping stones into running your business? Because I mean, on paper, when I see you, the way you teach everything, you have a business model, you have so far a career that we call it a powerhouse career. So how did you take those steps in the early days? Because you said it, that you didn't know what you're doing in 2012. So
Yeah, it actually took me a really long time to realize not only how to properly run a business, but to run a business that I felt proud of. I always felt like I was kind of doing the same thing that everybody was doing. I always felt like I was like the whole Style Me Pretty thing. Like I always thought that doing what everybody else was doing was the right approach. And it really took me like 4 to 5 years um, to realize that in order for me to really stand out, to not be that average photographer, that I just need to do things differently. And that's really when I really assessed my location where I was, and I saw what people were doing, what their style was doing, and I really focused on excelling on the complete opposite of that. So I realized that in order for me to stand out, in order for me to get the clientele that I really longed for, that I really wanted, um, I needed to just really stand out visually. Like it's. I mean, we're photographers, so you visually have to stand out. So sometimes we get so focused on what everybody else is doing that in reality we should be focusing on doing the opposite. And that's what happened when I started to do like a lot of off-camera flash stuff. I started to be more well known about like all the off-camera flash stuff, um and I realized that there was an opportunity there to really stand out in the industry, and I've been doing that for a couple of years now. So it took me a while, but I think that was a really big turning point in my career because I was very much that average photographer for the first like 4 or 5 years of my career.
nice, nice. And I love like most recently when I took one of your classes, I got to be, I did like I always do, get in there, post up, sit in the back. But I
Mm-hmm.
remember you saying something that I feel like it's prevalent even in that class that you did back then, which was one of the lessons I took was take a step back.
Yeah.
And what you did with your business, you took a step back, you saw what everyone was doing, but you were showing us an image, and you're like, this is a great image, aesthetically pleasing, and you showed us this amazing wide angle image, and then you said take a step back, and when you took a step back, you included the people and everything, so you had included all these different elements to give it more of an organic photo, because the class was based on photojournalism in
Yeah.
within the wedding, telling that story. So, where the first image was a very technical image, which is we all strive for, is one of those images you put up for the likes and everything, and it's a great image. But then when you took a step back and started including the people and more structure and everything, it told more of a story. So now you look at the image instead of saying, "Oh, I like that," and you're like, "Oh, what's the story behind that?"
Yep.
What are they doing
Yep.
in that moment? And I feel like what you just said, kind of correlates to what your early days when you took a step back, you saw what everyone was doing, and you said, "I want to do different." You want to do it differently. So, with that
Absolutely.
spirit in mind, the dare to be different, what kind of kept you motivated during those times? Because obviously that's taking a big risk when you go against the grain.
Yeah, and I think I'm very much somebody that was raised. I mean, I'm a first generation immigrant. I I very much was told that I realized that I'm in a position where I'm really not supposed to be where I am. I have spent my entire life basically just trying to push through a lot of different situations, whether it's societal situations or whether it's just systemic situations. And I've been very lucky to have a lot of people along the that story to help me out. And I think there's definitely, when it comes to a career, I think a lot of the time we tend to focus on the highlights. We tend to focus on, and this is one of the things I also like to talk about during my workshops, where it's like we're so focused on like making sure that we communicate this like grandiose, very like my life is perfect, my work is perfect, my work is perfectly curated, everything is just amazing. But in reality, Storytelling is about the imperfect things. It's about a lot of stuff that's more raw, that's more candid, and that's why what I mean by like taking a step back, and it's tough. I mean, as an artist, we're always kind of enamored with the perfect photos, with the wow shots. I mean, and rightfully so, right? I mean, when we see a photo that's like perfectly lit and it's got photoshopping done everywhere and it's got all this stuff, it just really is a wow shot. But I really think that in order for you to be a complete photographer, you should have a good balance of those wow images and those perfect images, while still staying true to what we really are there to do, which is the storytelling aspect of things, which is the candidness of things, which is not interfering with a lot of the moments that we see in front of us. Not letting our egos get in the way of the wedding. I see a lot of photographers that, in order for them to get a perfect shot, they might step in and try to reenact things, or try to redo things, or try to stage things. And to me, that's not necessarily something that I enjoy doing too much. I will do it during portraits, and I'll try to light things differently. But the kind of push through the industry trying to tell you that there's only a certain way of doing things.
Nice, I love it. And, I mean, it's funny because I kind of have that similar approach. Like, when it's the portraits, I feel like that's my time to shine. Like, they're giving me my moment to show why they hired me. But during the day, I try to be that fly on the wall and just tell the story and make sure things are lit. The most I might do is say, hey, you might turn this way real quick. I just do like those little tweaks, whatever. Just like, if she turns this way, her makeup will look even more amazing because natural light's hitting that side of the face. And,
right. Yeah.
And I just versus like, hey, you know what? Let me take you outside underneath this palm, underneath this tree, because that's where everybody gets their makeup done, outside in the humidity underneath this tree. Where it's like, no, just let's work with what you have. If they got ready in a broom closet, let's try to make that broom closet look amazing. Let's use our angles totally and everything. Agree. As I learned from you years ago, shoot low, go high. You get rid of all the distract elements when you're really low. So, but so let's take a little side step here. Now, obviously we see where we just see the these amazing pieces, but let's talk about the creativeness behind it. Like, kind of like what's been your process in creating it? Because some of those shots, I get it, are storytelling. You're in the moment. But I know there are moments where you're creating yourself. So how is it you're able to, walk into certain situations and come in with the level of creativity that you have? Because anybody that sees your work, they know there's a lot of creativeness, whether it's the lighting, the structure, all that. How do you correlate all that together?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess when I walk into, so if you asked me this question a couple of years ago, I generally would answer in a way that I was like, well, I have the knowledge of off-camera flash, so I can pretty much create whatever I have in my head. And I've kind of pivoted that a little bit to being more about working with what I have, as opposed to just kind of forcing something because I have a certain shot in my head. And I feel like that challenges me a little bit more. So when I walk into a room, like for example, like the getting ready room, or even portraits, like I try to just assess what's in front of me first before trying to introduce things that aren't necessarily there, which is usually off-camera flash or like anything else. But if I'm trying to create a really creative shot, I mean, a lot of the time I just walk in, I assess the natural light. I will always choose natural light over any sort of artificial lighting or any sort of off-camera flash. If I can't get to where I want to be, I always say that the off-camera flash is something that I use whenever there's a lack of light, and whenever I have something in my head that I want to create and the natural light doesn't allow me to do it. So if I go into a room, I assess the situation, I see the light, and I see that it's not working, then I'll introduce off-camera flash to create something cool. I usually do like the composites, like any of that stuff. But that's a very minimal part of my work, which is another misconception that a lot of people have, is that people tend to think that I'm constantly using off-camera flash. But I will 90% of the time will use just a natural light and whatever available light is. And that's where the knowledge of being able to read light, like just you mentioning that being able to turn somebody's head could make or break an image, because you're turning them into the light, and you don't necessarily, like if I'm turning somebody into a light, then if I see it, then I might just switch it up a little bit. I like to play with shadows a lot. I like to really try to play with lines and direct light and the sun, because I think that's one of the most fun parts of our job. So yeah, just assessing natural light, and then if you can't, then just pop out the off-camera flash and try to be a little bit more creative when it comes to that stuff.
It's great because, like I said, obviously, I met you through the Shutterfest world was when I was exposed to you, and just kind of like seeing your approach and everything. But let's go back. You started in 2012. What was it that prompted you to pick up the camera and say, you know what, I want to try this crazy thing for photography? Everyone has their backstory and what made them a photographer. So what was yours?
So my mother actually got me a Canon T3i for Christmas. I always had a camera in my hand. My first camera was a Casio XLM when it was a point and shoot camera. I recorded, I think, 240p video. And when I was in high school, I had a teacher that was Mr. Petavolano. He had a very, very pivotal part in me becoming an artist. My dad was an artist. He was sort of like a struggling artist. He was a painter. I always kind of saw that side of like the struggles of like being an artist. So I knew that I wanted to end up with some sort of art, but I knew how difficult that was going to be. Once I was in high school, this teacher really inspired me to take on some sort of art, and it started with video, and then it just kind of, I just always kind of had a camera at hand. When my mother bought me my first DSLR for Christmas, it's just like everybody else's story. Like I just started taking pictures of like our dog, started taking pictures of just anything that I could possibly take pictures of, and that really turned into something where I really saw the opportunity to do something more with it. For a more like, I do carry a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because I know that I'm not supposed to be where I am. I know that I have a little bit of a different story than a lot of people have. My father actually left our family when I was very young. Well, actually, I was like 17 years old, and I had to take on the responsibility of taking care of my family. So I did have that like you did this to me. I couldn't do like what the structured life of somebody that is meant to go to college, like do all this stuff. So I always had that chip on my shoulder, and I always kind of wanted to make it an artist to like tell my father to shove it a little bit. So it's nice to look back at it and be like, yeah, I still am a successful artist, and you couldn't do that even after you left my family. So a little bit of spite is always good. I think it's a good good way to.
Look, I love my dad, but I still remember when he gave me my first film camera and was like, this better not be a waste of time. So it was like he gave it to me out of love because he saw like at an early age, like everybody as a kid, I wanted to be a sports photographer because reality sunk in that I was probably never going to make it to the NFL. I was too small and too untalented, whatever you want to call it, but I wasn't going to play at the highest levels. And I said, what are going to be the closest way to keep me near the sport or sports that I want to be around? And I was like, either become a sports agent or become a photographer, because no one bothers the photographer. I'm at every game, so. And then just growing up, I watched Sports Illustrated religiously, so I definitely was like, oh, I want to do sports. But it's funny, what made me realize like storytelling and why I love storytelling was this movie when I forget how old it was when it came out. I want to say I was probably 17 or 16, but it was called Crazy Beautiful, and it had Kristen Dunst in it.
Yeah, I remember that movie.
Kirsten, I forget her name. Yeah,
Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah, you'll look at IMDb, guys, if you can't figure it out. But her character, she was like kind of a tortured photographer, but she would do things throughout the movie, and it always stood out, like the stuff she did with the camera. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because she was doing film stuff and these little film tricks. But I was just like, between scrapbooking and doing the yearbook and being in high school and having certain moments that we put in the yearbook that I was like, oh, I remember I took that picture or whatever. I thought that was always kind of cool too. So the sports photography thing didn't work out, but obviously photography was always on that back burner. And then I joined the military, and then I started taking the class to really dive in because I just needed something creative to do. And then here we are years later, when a lot of people said photographers don't make money, don't do it, you need to get a job, which again, there's nothing wrong with getting a job, but if you love this thing called photography, you want to get better. I've always said, I don't care if you have a 9 to 5 and you make 6 figures at your job. if this is your creative outlet, man, just be the best at it and continue to push yourself. So, over the years, obviously we have new changes. We're going through a new change now with the introduction of AI, and when we went through the change up from film to digital. So you got to experience two different shifts in this industry. But what do you think has been the biggest contributor to where you're at today in regards to your journey?
I guess if we're talking about AI specifically, I would definitely have to credit that to one of my sponsors who kind of chased me around for the first when they were first like they weren't even like a thing at first.
Before you announce it, I'm just gonna kick a big shout out to Aftershoot. They're not sponsored, but they need to. Justin, love you guys. I'm a big advocate of editing AI and everything, but God, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. And, and if it bubbles me and people that know me from Imagine get mad at me for saying this, look, whether you're doing Imagine, I don't care. Get on this AI editing software, whatever. It is saving so much time. Like I can't even speak. There's not enough words to express how much time I've been giving back now that I've been incorporating AI. But go ahead. I'll go ahead and let you finish up.
No, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I think that after being a non-believer in AI and them kind of like telling me like, hey, like really, I think we have something that's really cool. And then eventually I started using it. I started to see the opportunities that it was giving me. I was saving a lot of time. And now I have, I have a workflow that just kind of works itself out so well. So for example, like we were discussing like Alyssa and Sal's shoot that I photographed in New York City a couple of weeks ago. And there were two softwares that made that shoot basically possible for me to be able to photograph them, give them a preview within a few hours and give them the entire gallery within like 2 to 3 days. And that was Aftershoot because it culled my images. It edited my images with my profile. And then Evoto was another one that I just kind of been using in the last couple of weeks and I've just been super impressed with. And even just like the fact that I can just do a preset where it just kind of just does a very slight skin tone correction and it does some like slight just changes to like the tonality and like just the overall like texture of skin, which is really hard to do, especially when you don't want to go into Photoshop and like fix every single photo. Just the combination of Aftershoot and Evoto has been pretty amazing in the last couple of weeks of me using it. And I've been using Aftershoot for years, so obviously I have a pretty good idea of what that's like. So.
Yeah, I actually recently was speaking, someone that kind of asked me similar question about the AI and everything. And I just said, let me break it down. And I could tell this is the room that I got to, not necessarily talk to them like they're stupid, but I said, let me make it really simple for you. I said, I love cooking. I love grilling. I'm a Texas boy. We love smoking our meats. We love barbecuing. We love doing all that stuff. I said, but you know what we hate the most when it comes associated with cooking is cleaning up, doing the dishes, doing all that. I said, that's the same thing way I feel about weddings. I love weddings. I love being a part of the day. I love creating moments, everything. I love being a part of all that. I love telling stories. But there's that 6 to 8 hours after the wedding that I have to do called editing. And for years, I was back with a higher editor doing all that stuff. But I knew that was just the downside. It's like, man, when you had a long weekend and you did all this wedding shooting and you did this and you did that, and then you got to edit everything, you're like, oh my gosh. But when I said that thing gave me back so much time, it's like imagine being able to cook every day and never having to worry about dishes ever again because someone did it for you. And that's the best way I could describe using AI and everything.
I think I would agree, and I think a lot of the time when it comes to AI, you have to really be of the understanding that it's not doing everything for you. You still have as much control as you want. So it's not something where you just like throw the images and it does everything for you. I still like to have some control of it too, but I like to be able to have the option of having like, hey, I'm gonna edit these more, I'm gonna edit these less, or so it works out really well.
Yep. And again, you're talking about the story with Sal and Alyssa. So first off, I'm gonna give a little shout out to Mandy, who got some awesome behind the scenes because it made all of us get jealous. We're like, God. But and then also you got to shoot, shooting in New York. It's still on my bucket list to this day. I've always wanted to go to Grand Central Station and do a shoot there. So that's really cool. But it goes into my next questions. What's been some of your favorite places to create, art at?
Oh, just doing that shoot with Mandy of Alyssa and Sal, and it was, I mean, and I do have to also give her a shout out because she was shooting them as well, and some of her shots are actually, I think, are better than mine. So we were joking around the entire time where Sal was like, well, no wonder you ranked higher than Esteban in the in the speaker the speaker ranking. So I was like,
So I'm just,
yeah,
I really didn't want Esteban. I figure if I can get Esteban here, I can maneuver and get the real talent out, you know.
Yeah, that would actually make sense.
Thank you for being a stepping stone, Esteban.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think New York City is probably a place that comes to mind right away. I think being only about an hour and a half to 2 hours from New York City is definitely a huge thing for me. I love, we were talking about this earlier, where I love architecture, I love texture, I love buildings, I love lines, I love direct light. Like, these are all things that, I mean, if you think of New York, that these are all things that you're gonna get. I'm not very good with like open fields or like all the like mountainous stuff. Like I love doing that, and I think there's a lot of people that are very good at it. But I very much grew up as an artist, like going to the city and like thinking of composition, thinking of lines, thinking of all that stuff. So I mean, my favorite place would probably be, I mean, I would say probably New York City. I mean, Chicago is always a place that kind of resembles.
I was thinking downtown Chicago and the riverfront. You know,
yeah.
Oh man, when I had that opportunity, I was like, when am I ever going to get to do this again? And I remember just going, you two kiss real quick. And I remember just backing up as far as I can, and trying to get as much as I can into that picture. But again, taking that step back, and they still to this day have it blown up on their wall. It's probably one of their favorite, and it was just a happy accident because we were just on this ferry ride and trying to go to the next location, and I was one moment eating a hot dog, had the camera on my hip, and then I go, oh, let me throw the hot dog down. I was like, take this picture. Damn, I just spent $11 on this hot dog, but it's really worth it. It's great. But we talk about open fields and open skylines. Like, I mean, obviously Texas is what we're known for, those amazing sunsets, that open fields, the ranches, there's a lot of land out here. So it's, we get to do we have that happy opportunity to make the subject small, but then get this grand landscape. So obviously, we get these skylines and these clouds that you just, people, AI the shit out of, but we get them for free here. So
yeah, I've noticed that where somebody will post something from like even like those Florida sunsets, like Texas, like the colors are just, I'm just always so jealous because we have some pretty crappy colors up here. So
that's why I joke with Michael when first time he came here, he goes, dude, you will never see this in California. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, dude, you got the beaches, you got this. Like, I'm like always jealous of like, they have this amazing weather. And he's like, you got this amazing. And then he just shows me the difference. He's like, all my clouds are AI, or we had input. He goes, I get it for free here. And I'm like, yeah, this is, so it's always like, different flavors, which is always fun to create. Yeah. Right. So New York, man. So when's the next time? You're out there quite a bit though, right? In New York?
Yeah, I mean, most of my clients are from the city, so I whether I'm doing an engagement session or wedding, I'm usually in the New York, New Jersey area. So I'm there quite a bit, probably twice a month, easily, sometimes more. So I just start last weekend. So.
And then you have gone international, right? I might be confusing you. Actually, I think I am confusing you. You weren't the one in Peru,
No, so I was invited to Peru. Okay. I unfortunately had a wedding.
Oh, okay.
I had a wedding that week, so I couldn't make it. But yeah, I mean, I have a workshop coming up in October, which is in France with Gary and Kim Evans, with Mandy, with Justin from Aftershoot. So we're all kind of teaming up and going to a chateau in France, and we're going to do a whole week retreat. So that'll be beginning of October, maybe mid-October. I forgot the exact dates. But Gary and Kim Evans, who are also speakers at Shutterfest, who you should also have on here because they're
Gary
awesome.
and Kim, and we've actually we've talked about it. They're going to be. I've got like this laundry list of people now, and I swear if I get another, how come you haven't had so and so? Like, look, everyone has schedules. I am scheduling it meticulously. I hear you people, and trust me, I'm trying to get the people you guys want. I mean, obviously, I got Esteban. You were a huge between And I'm gonna give a shout out to Johnny, who gives me the list of people every week. Hey, you should have so and so on. You should have this person. You should have that. I'm like, yes, I'm working on it, bro. I don't want to record 84 episodes a week. I try to keep it to 2 or 3 so I can keep the workflow going. But come on, I'm trying, people.
Yeah. So they're doing the retreat, and they invited us to go. So that'll be cool. And I'm also shooting a wedding in Italy with Mandy a few weeks before. So that'll be fun. But no, I was pretty sad when I couldn't go to Peru, because I was looking at some photos and it looked pretty incredible. So maybe the next one.
No, shout out to Rick and Kayla. Congratulations. We're so happy for you. I love it when my industry folks.
Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, they were in Peru. I was like, oh man. To me, I just look at like, now that my oldest is heading off to college and into the military, it's like, okay, now my schedule's gonna finally open up the way I want to. It's like, how am I going to not go crazy next year with the travel and everything? Because now I have the ability to say, oh, I don't want to be gone for more than 4 days because I got kids back home. Now it's like, oh, my wife and I can handle one kid together now. Because the oldest is out, she's in college, so now it's like, okay, do I want to try to take this wedding, and do I want to try to take this workshop, and do I want to do this and do that? And I've got fortunately booked a wedding for Greece next year, so I'm super excited about that. Finally after all these years. But I just said, you know what? If I can't travel and do what I want to do, dominate Texas, at least dominate my home state. So that was
and sometimes those weddings are the ones that, I mean, I know that whenever I'm traveling for weddings, they take up a lot more of your time, so you do have the conscience of the balance between like family time and work time. So I like to think of the weddings that are local to me as the ones that are kind of like, these are the ones that I'm technically making more money on, because it's not requiring
more time
to go in and travel and go in the night before and leave the day after. Sometimes I even stay an extra couple of days so I can explore, which I love exploring the city. Like, one of like my absolute favorite things in the world is to just like go to a city and just grab a camera and just walk around and just take photos of literally anything. I think that's been one of the most like therapeutic things that I could do for my mental health lately. And it's been awesome to do. So, but they take up a lot of time, especially if it's like an international wedding or even if it just requires a plane ride. So dominate Texas and then go have fun international. Yeah.
Well, that's how I ended up getting the Greece wedding. She was a guest, or she was a bridesmaid at the wedding I was doing, and then she said, "Yeah, we're probably going to do destination wedding." And I jokingly said, "Oh, well, I travel." And I always say that because we're all going to say that when we're going to do destination. Oh yeah, I travel. And just say, nah, it's not like you've done it so many times when you're like, And then my back of my head, I'm like, she's not going to call me. They always say, oh, I'll give you a call. Let me get your card or whatever. And you give them your information. They may call you, they may not. But then when she's like, we saw the pictures, we love it. Oh my gosh. She was like, we definitely want you for the wedding. And I was just like, okay. And then I go, all right, let's schedule a meeting. And in my head, I said, as soon as I tell them they got to pay a travel fee, they're going to dump it. Because, I'm going I go in very close mind. I don't go in expecting to get the booking. I was just going like, look, I'm just going to give them the facts. They're either going to hire me or they're not. And I've learned, I've developed that callous to not get attached, to where I'm saying, you know what? Hey, look, if all you can afford is this much, just go ahead and pay me that one. If you can add on an extra $500, I'll cover the rest of the travel out of my pocket. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. But fortunately, they were just like, yep, that sounds good. And they said, okay, so travel fees, how does that work? And I said, well, this is the way I do it. I booked the tickets. I send you the invoice because I like to control when I'm going to fly in and fly out and all that stuff. Yeah, and they were just all for it. I'm like, sweet. So everything's been signed. We're all set for next year. So I can't wait.
That's awesome.
But we talked about travel. You talked about, something about your mental space. I kind of do the same thing where it's like, take a step back and, take a camera. But I also like to be a foodie too. Anytime I travel anywhere, I love to find out what they're locally known for. Okay,
yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
That's why I said the Chicago thing. I threw the hot dog. I'm like, damn it, that's a Chicago hot dog. It's like, this is what they're known for. It's like, it's like being in St. Louis and throwing your ribs down the ground, or throwing your brisket down the ground in Texas, or your burrito.
Yeah. No, literally everything you just named are things that in the past like year and a half to 2 years, like Mandy and I have whenever we go anywhere, it's like
gotta be a foodie.
We gotta go grab some like food. Like we went to a barbecue place when we were in St. Louis for Shutter Fest a couple months ago.
Okay.
Nashville, we do like Hattie B. Like I like spicy things, so I had like the spiciest one that they carry, and I suffered for a couple of days, but it was worth it. So I always want to try to taste
Oh,
as many things as possible. So
yeah, when I was in Miami, we did it was the couple that took me to this Cuban spot, and I was just like, because it was a Cuban couple, or
mhm.
his friend was from Cuba, so it was a big just Latin festival in Miami. It was a great time. I had a blast just being there. She's from Texas, so she flew me out there with her. But man, the Cuban food, I was just like, oh, I've been missing out. Like,
yeah,
because
we
I'm
go
sure
to Miami every year,
oh
and it's
yeah,
one of the things we look more forward to. I mean, it's usually in December for like Art Basel, which is like their like fashion week thing,
okay.
and I usually have a workshop during that same week, and I mean, just and we spend a couple of extra days, and when we're there, we're just like, all right, let's just embrace the food, the people. We'll go to Little Havana. We'll do like all kinds of things. Last year, actually, Harshat, the owner of Aftershoot, the founder of Aftershoot, was with us, and we just like grabbed cameras and we just literally just walked and just did a bunch of street photography, and it was such a great time because it's cool to just embrace instead of like staying in a hotel for an entire week and not do anything, like just go out and explore and like, meet people and take
Get stay in the
photos.
hotel and DoorDash, man. Go out there,
Yeah,
get some
yeah,
steps in, and just
yep.
stay safe. But man, just like
Mm.
that's the beauty of traveling the world. And again, I
Yep.
got to grow up being a kid that was dad was in the military. I got to travel. I probably saw more countries than and it took me becoming an adult to realize I've seen more countries than most people before I was even 18 and not even
Yeah,
realize it. My mom's from
yeah.
Thailand. I went to, just all these different places that I was able to go to at a young age and not even
Mm.
realize how blessed and fortunate I was. So that's why
Yeah,
I like traveling, and not staying in one place comes natural to me because I've been doing
yeah,
it my entire life. But it never dawned on me that was just a normalcy for me.
yeah,
Versus,
yeah.
staying in the bubble, staying in your same city and never getting out.
Right. Yeah.
But I know we're getting close to the 45-minute mark. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I'm just gonna throw in a couple questions that were
Mhm.
asked of me. So what challenges have you faced as a photographic artist, and how have they influenced your growth and development?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think challenges are something that we constantly go through. I think that regardless of how successful we are, regardless of how new or distinguished in the industry we are, we always kind of run through our own challenges, whether it's within ourselves or whether it's with others in the industry or trying to conform to the industry. Um, I think a lot of the time as artists, I tend to be pretty, I don't know, pretty stubborn when it comes to like my style and trying to almost seem like I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna just shoot my way and do whatever. Um, but I guess what like a lot of like the newer trends, which is like the motion, the on camera flash, the direct flash, like all that stuff is always something that I've had to embrace a little bit more because a lot of the time I let my ego get in the way. So I've just really learned to, hey, you know what? I'm doing this for my couples, and I'm doing for myself. So what I'm creating is a combination of what they're envisioning and what I'm envisioning. So really just embracing the trendy stuff instead of being like that like guy that's always like, oh no, like I will not embrace the trend. So like I love being able to see like, hey, what do my clients want? I'm going to create that for them, and then what do I want? I'm going to create that for them. So just embracing the trend, I think, has been a little bit of a challenge, but I think I'm coming around as much as
Okay, and then a couple more questions before we get you out here. Let me see. I got a list of people that sent me. Someone told. I always tell a small group like this is who's going to be on the show. What question should I ask them? And
mm-hmm.
they send me their thoughts. Let me see. To be already touch back. If you could go back to your younger, earlier self, what advice would you give them when they start their journey?
Oh man, I mean, I guess career-wise, I would probably definitely tell myself that to stop trying to be like everybody else. I think I like to think of my career in two parts. Is the one where I was really putting that focus on being like everybody else, and the one that I realized that I went into this industry to do things like I wanted them. I didn't want to. I hated working for people. I hated doing that. I hated the idea of thinking that I wasn't able to be creative. I wasn't able to be myself. And I think a lot of the time we kind of fall into this whole like I need to become somebody else in order to get the people that I want to hire me. And I hate that. So if you see any sort of like post that I make, anything in my community in Steel and Flint, it's very raw. It's very much who I am. And I've just accepted that a lot of the time that might not resonate well with certain people. And if all I can do is just be as real as I could possibly be. And if people don't like that, then that's on them and not me. So it did take me a while to really accept the fact that I in order for me to be happy, I just have to be myself, and try to not masquerade myself as somebody else, or like, especially with like social media. I think it's like one of those things where like everybody always wants to show like their highs and their highlights, and when in reality, I feel like people really appreciate you when you're raw and honest about your struggles. We talked about earlier where you like to talk about like the stuff that the struggles, the ups and downs, instead of just kind of focusing on like how amazing everything is. So yeah, that's probably it.
Last question, I would be remiss in that, as in good old fashioned Shutter Saga and Marvin style, we got to ask something silly. So it was how it was Esteban, love your work. How can I take pictures that look as good as you?
Oh, I have no idea. Yeah, I do not have the answer to that. Yeah, I mean, and I guess if I were to really just give some advice about like actual specific like technical stuff, is just try to not run away from a lot of the technical stuff. The technical stuff is stuff that you can learn. It really is completely dependent on how much effort you put into it. I always say that your business and your work and the quality of your work and the quality of your business is a direct correlation of how much effort you're putting into it. If I make $10 this month, it's because of how much effort I put into it. I can't blame anybody else. If I make $100,000 this month, it's because of how much effort I put into it. So if you want to, I wasn't born talented. I didn't wake up one day and say, oh man, I already have this knowledge in my head, like I'm going to start creating. And that's what's important, is that your creativity is a direct correlation of how much effort you put into actually learning the techniques that you want to learn. So if you want to take pictures in the style that I take, and take a workshop, look up people that you look up to, reach out to them, go to their workshop, go to their talks at like Shutterfest. Really just embrace the idea that we're artists and we constantly have to learn. So if you find somebody that you look up to and you think you want to shoot in a style that they shouldn't, just embrace it and just try to go all in with the knowledge, because I think that's one of the most underrated aspects of what we do, is the knowledge and the educational aspect of things. So,
and if you also want a good place to start, you can always go to Still and Flint Society, Wedding Photography Education, featuring Esteban Gil.
That's the one.
Now it's a great platform. I've learned a lot. It really is a community of like-minded individuals. So I'm always appreciative of anybody that gives back and doesn't keep the information, because it's out there, it's available. Yeah. But I mean, I love that you're always giving, and that's something that I appreciate about you. So, man, thank you so much. Where can we find you on social media?
So if you're a photographer and you want to learn things, steelandflintsociety.com, Steel and Flint Society on Facebook, on Instagram. If you want to find my work, it's just EGIL Photo, so E-Gil Photo, like that's on Gil Photo, on Instagram and on Facebook. And that's pretty much it. But yeah, usually if you want any sort of like educational stuff or any like announcements on when workshops are, or any posts, probably everything is within that Facebook community, which I really enjoy having that as like the hub of everything, or the information or anything that I want to communicate.
Kind of clear the area where there's a little controversial Shutterfest, but we'll just go ahead and address it, because I was going to not address it or say it. All right. So to the person that said to me, like, when we were at Shutterfest, oh my God, that's Esteban. And I said, go talk to them. And they gave this rock. Oh my God, but it's Esteban. He's not a rock star. I joke about these guys being rock stars. He is a guy just like me. He drinks his coffee and he loves people as much as I do. So, obviously this is a good way to just pull the veil that, no, he was never this rock star. He just, just a really awesome fucking photographer, and that, that we grow to love and appreciate. And I was like, but I say that with the reverence of, guys, stop being afraid to meet your heroes, because you never know how much of an awesome conversation they're going to give you and how much you're going to learn even more about them. And then you realize there's never been this parallel or this gap between the two. We're all people that are all chasing the same dreams and goals. And,
Yeah,
and this is another example,
very true. And I appreciate you saying that, because a lot of the time, um, one of my favorite things about speaking at conferences and being within like-minded people is just having those conversations. I feel like that's what the most that I get out of a conference is usually the conversations I have with people. So if somebody ever comes up to me, I know what it's like to be on the other side of things. So I know when the first time that I went to these conferences where I felt like I couldn't come up to people. So I never want to give up the energy that you shouldn't come up to me and talk to me. I've had really amazing conversations with people at Shutterfest, at WPPI, like any of these places. And it literally is just a matter of just saying, hey, and just starting a conversation. And I love that. I think that's my favorite part of going to the conferences. So don't ever be afraid to tap me on the shoulder and ask for a high five and ask me a random question, because that's really why we're there. We're not just there to talk and go home. We're there to make sure that we interact with people. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love Shutterfest so much, because they really instill in us that you're not just there as a speaker, you're there as an attendee, and you're there to interact, and you're there to really embrace yourself within the community. And I think that's why it's such a successful conference.
Yes. How to say, I just remember the 2 years now that I've got to be around you and get to learn from you and, chat with you and have these amazing conversations. Just, I had to say that, like, dude, he's so fucking cool. Like, why are y'all so scared? Like, he's got on the white jacket and this and that. He's like, yeah, he's just like, come on, dude. Again, you don't realize, like, sometimes, I always say, in a tortured artist kind of way, sometimes they're lonely as shit and they think like, thing is when you're elevating, when you're chasing, sometimes when you're chasing greatness, that you do put a gap between you and other people, because you're chasing a certain level of you're chasing personal greatness, and it's a journey that only you can be on, and no one understands what your personal greatness is because they're on their journey, which may not be the same as yours. So there is always going to be that, like, oh, there might be some distance, but that still doesn't mean, like, dude, we live for these moments to know that, like, what we're doing can be impactful to someone else that's looking up, to that's looking up to us, or they see like the success side of it, not realizing that this has been a 12-year journey, or 15-year journey, or 10-year journey, or whatever, but that doesn't mean we're not people, and that we didn't fall and stumble and make 100 mistakes and go for it on the 101st try. This and trial and error, we've just been able to do it for 10 plus years. So
yeah, even on my end, I mean, when I talk to people, I'm not perfect, and I love learning from people regardless of where they are in their career. I mean, I think one of my favorite things is to actually just listen to people and learn things. I still very much have a lot to learn, and I've learned from people that have been doing it for much less than I have. And as long as I'm always open to the idea of learning things, I think that the conversations usually flow pretty well. And as long as we leave a conversation thinking that we both learned something, then I'm all for it. So.
Well, hey, again, thank you so much for your time. I know we went a little bit over, but hey, you've been so gracious. So thank you so much, man. It's great having you. I can't wait to see you the next go around. Not sure when that's going to be, but hopefully it's going to be sooner rather than later, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks for the comment. It was awesome.
That's it for this week's show. Again, thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, and share with others. Leave those reviews and check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Until then, see you next week.